Local social media channels as well as Iranian media are reporting that an American F-15 fighter jet has crashed in Kuwait. Preliminary reports say that both pilots managed to eject and eyewitnesses filmed the moment of the crash. There are also images online showing one of the crew members already on the ground. The Iranians also claimed that they attacked the American embassy in Kuwait. There is no confirmation from the United States. So far, there are no confirmations either of an attack on the diplomatic mission or of the plane being shot down. The death of Khamenei has dealt a reputational blow to the Kremlin, according to Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna. It is also noted that the Iranian leadership, which supported Moscow in the war against Ukraine, directly influences the security of Europe itself. At the same time, Iran's nuclear program must remain under international control, and sanctions pressure should continue until Tehran stops repressing its own people and chooses the path of diplomacy.
The death of Khamenei directly weakens the positions of Russia and Putin and undermines his authority in the world. There is no protection for Iran from Moscow, and we see that Russia is unable to provide it. The Kremlin sells the illusion of strength but cannot guarantee the survival of its closest allies. The death of Khamenei opens up the possibility for the people of Iran to enter a new era. This is a chance to break free from a repressive regime that has lasted for decades. Margus Chak.
Now joining me live, Stanislav Zhelikovsky. He is a PhD in political science and an associate member of the Ukrainian Academy of Geopolitics. Hello and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Who is actually losing allies in this conflict in the Middle East? Because right now we're talking about the fact that Putin's position will be in question, how willing Iran will be to continue helping, to keep providing support both with weapons and in general with ideological backing. But in your opinion, who is losing today or who is gaining advantages from this conflict in the Middle East today?
At the moment, we are witnessing the conflict in the Middle East gaining momentum. We see more and more signs that Iran is ready to fight to the end. That is, it is ready. The regime currently in power, is ready to do whatever it takes to survive and, let's say, to achieve its main goal, to fend off the ongoing attacks and further strengthen its ties with those countries that we now refer to as the so-called axis of evil. And if we talk about the axis that has existed recently and the axis that is still taking shape, then obviously if it happens that the Iranian regime ceases to exist as a result of this conflict, it will mean that for such countries as, say, North Korea, for countries like China and Russia, there will no longer be the same room for maneuver as before. After all, Iran is a serious strategic ally for them. And in fact, the loss of the regime could mean that Iran might actually, on the contrary, switch to the Western coalition. Of course, it is not a Western country, but it could maintain close ties with the Western world, with the free world. If in this case moderate forces come to power in this country who wish, let's say, to change the paradigm in Iran, which has existed for several decades now, that is, if they move towards democratization, liberalization, towards restoration or strengthening of ties with certain international actors, but not with those whom we now refer to as the axis of evil. And obviously, I agree with the assessments that if this happens, meaning the fall of the Ayatollah's regime in the Islamic Republic of Iran, it will deal a significant blow to the positions, in fact, of China, Russia, and other countries that challenge the existing world order. And thus, this would mean that these countries can no longer boast that they are ready to defend others. Recent events that have taken place in Syria and Venezuela also demonstrate that these countries like Russia, are unable to protect their partners, their allies. And so this is a sign that they are growing weaker, that they cannot stand up to the free world, that they can only fight locally, let's say, against someone, or fight against those states on which they have focused all their resources. Well, again, here we can mention the Russian-Ukrainian war. First and foremost, we must constantly talk about it. And this means that Russia has spent most of its capabilities precisely on the war against Ukraine. And for ages, moreover, It still hasn't achieved the goals it desires, and I am convinced that it never will. And the loss of Iran, which has helped Russia in this war and continues to help, basically even now, as long as that regime exists there, means that for Ukraine, it could obviously be good news if that regime falls. Because obviously we can perceive modern Iran as a co-aggressor in this war. And the loss of such a partner and ally for Russia would mean that it would no longer be able to fully utilize the means it has, many of which it imports particularly from Iran. Well, and obviously this would be a powerful blow to the Kremlin's own position. And I do not rule out that this could also be part of the strategy of Donald Trump's administration. That is a gradual, let's say, destruction of these regimes in various countries. And in this way, a country like Russia may become more compliant, especially if we are talking about negotiations regarding a peaceful settlement. So the loss of partners is definitely, meanwhile, the Western world can further strengthen its positions, strengthen its capabilities, because we see that European countries are also opposed to the regime in Tehran, and we see that they are ready to support America. And by the way, Ukraine as well is ready to cooperate, for example, in the context of providing those same unmanned aerial systems to counter them. And there is already information that Kyiv is open to cooperation. And you see that the United Kingdom has turned to Ukraine for support. And this, obviously, the West understands that Ukrainians have the greatest experience in countering Iranian technologies. Again, this is a very bitter experience for us, but it can strengthen the position of the Ukrainian state on the international stage because, in fact, Ukraine can become, and I am convinced that it will become, an integral part of the new security architecture in which there is no place for regimes like Putin's, Iranian, North Korean, and so on.